You're listening to episode number 9 of the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. Now, the fact that you're listening to this podcast means that you are into personal development. Now, if you're like most people into personal development, you have also heard of the law of attraction. And basically, you know that means that we attract things, and many people talk about it primarily in terms of money. However, you probably believe in the law of attraction and you probably embrace it, yet if you're like most people, you're struggling with money. And the reason why is because you are using the law of attraction against you instead of using it to work for you. So, if you're still struggling with things in life, stay tuned because we're going to change that in this episode. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. Okay, let's start here. What I want you to understand is that, many people, they'll have a really bad day and they will say things like, life is testing me today. Well, what I want you to understand is that the universe does not test you. It reflects you. Life does not test you. It reflects you. And that's where we're going to start this podcast because I want you to understand everything that you have in your life or you don't have is reflecting who and how you're being unconsciously and who and how you're being in your thought. See, if you have something in your life, whatever it is that you have, let's say that you have a lot of money or a lot of opportunities show up for you, you have that because you vibrate it. And if you don't have it, it's because you don't vibrate it. So let me explain a little more here. This episode is about the vibration of your consciousness, which is physics. Most of the law of attraction stuff is about things like focus on the money and see it and imagine it and all these kinds of things. But for many people, like I started this episode with, many people actually, they sit down and they imagine and they visualize and they visualize money in their account, but the money still doesn't come for them. Why? Have you ever asked yourself that? Maybe you found yourself in that same place. You read some book, you watch some DVD, or you hear some speaker talking about the law of attraction, and you're like, well, that can work for me. And then you try it, and then you know what? Your money doesn't change. Well, the reason that happens is because many people use the law of attraction to work against themselves. Many people use the law of attraction to repel money instead of attracting money. So make sure you listen all the way through because when you're done with this episode, you're going to understand exactly what I mean and how to actually use the law of attraction to attract for you instead of repelling things from you. I was reading recently, last month or so, and it was Forbes magazine. Actually, it was a few months ago. Time flies, It was Forbes magazine in January, and there was an article, and the article was that 78% of Americans struggle, and they live paycheck to paycheck. Now, you probably don't live paycheck to paycheck, but my question is, are you always struggling with money? Is there never enough? Is there money in, money out? The thing about money, I remember a client of mine one time, he lived in Los Angeles, and he made right at $700,000 a year. And even at $700,000 a year, which actually puts him in the top 1% of wage earners in the United States, he was always broke. So what I'm talking about here, I'm talking about struggling with money, and that applies to many levels of economics. Whether you're making 40 grand a year or 70, I know people, as I just said, they make 700, 800, 900, a million, and they're still struggling with money. Why? Because they're using the law of attraction, which we'll talk about more in this episode, to repel money as opposed to using it to attract money. Generally speaking, when people talk about the law of attraction, what they mean is what you focus on is what you attract. And again, you've heard the motivational speakers say things like, you focus on the money in your account and you visualize it and you imagine it and all these kinds of things. However, there's a lot more to it. Before we get to that, I want to go into my story because I think a lot of you can probably relate to this. I grew up very much working class. If I had to calculate my father's income today, it calculates right at about $55,000 per year, and that's a family of five, a husband and wife and three kids. This day and age, that is not a lot of money. And what I constantly heard in my house, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, is never enough money. Never, never enough. Where does it go? We can't afford that. We are not like other people. My dad even said to me once, he said, you know what? I was not born under the $1,000,000 star. And my entire life growing up was always about struggle and working hard and putting your nose to the grindstone and putting in an honest day's work. Also, I have to say, I did grow up in a very small Texas town. It was a farming town. Literally, we had one stoplight, and I was working from early in the morning, from 5 o'clock in the morning, till, after dinner time many times. So I grew up with that hard work ethic where you have to work hard for your money. And my parents instilled that in me, is that you have to work hard to get ahead. And my mother always, she used to say, well, I've taught you boys that you have to struggle to get what you want. So for many years, let me back up here. So I went to college. I went to a very good school, and I've never done physical labor since then. However, even though I had not done physical labor since I left where I grew up, I left the farm. And yes, I lived on a farm. We had pigs and chickens and cows, and we grew our own food. And, a funny story is my grandfather grew all of our own food. And I remember in high school saying, why can't we be like normal people and buying our food from the supermarket? When in reality, I grew up with organic food. So when I left for college, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to work for money anymore. I'm not going to, be up at 5 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays. I'm not going to struggle for money. But the reality is I went to a really good school, graduated with a couple of degrees in 4 years. I worked my way through school. But the reality is for about a decade after that, even though I was working in professional jobs, I still struggled with money. I wasn't in the same environment, physically speaking, but I struggled. So how many of you can relate to that? You've gone to the good school, you put in all the work and all the time and all the hours, yet no matter what you do, you're still struggling. So here's the first big takeaway that I want you to get in our time together, as you're listening, is a huge myth, and I'm going to break this down for you, but a huge myth is that money comes from hard work. And I'm a betting man, so I would bet many of you, probably 80% of you listening, have that same belief that I have to work hard to make money. Now, I learned that myth growing up. You've listened to the episode on subconscious programming, or maybe you have or haven't here, but there's an episode on how we're indoctrinated and how we become who we are. So I learned that myth, and I lived it for many years. And then in my 20s, I actually voraciously got involved in personal development. And, I had the old Sony Walkman with the earphones, and, I was listening to cassette tapes. And there's a company called Nightingale Conant, and they put out personal development products. And I listened to, cassette program, eight cassettes over and over. And everything back then, from Stuart Wilde to Deepak Chopra to Tony Robbins in his early days, and to Wayne Dyer and Marianne Williamson, and all this stuff. And, I even bought literally tons and tons of books on manifestation. Literally, I have probably read no less than 200 books on the subject of manifestation. Yet, I went through my entire 20s struggling, waiting tables, quitting my corporate jobs, living paycheck to paycheck. And actually, the only ones that were making money were the people that I was buying books from, because I was buying every book that I could find and read and get my hands on and underline and take notes on. It's kind of like Tom Cruise in that movie he was in called Cocktail, where he was a bartender, but he always wanted to be rich and he always had some kind of self-help book around him. I was kind of that guy. And things did not change for me until my 30s, my early 30s. And actually, it changed for me when I turned 32. And that's when I met my brother-in-law. Now, I want to back up here. I was using back then the law of attraction. And I mean, like I said, I read all the books. And I could explain the law of attraction to you backwards and forwards. But you know what? I still wasn't attracting money. And actually, for the most part, as I alluded to earlier, I was struggling with money many, many years. And then in my early 30s, I met my brother-in-law. And I have to just be me in these episodes, and I have to bring my past and my experience because I can't help you otherwise. And if I try to please everyone, I'm not going to please anyone. So I'm going to talk, as I'd mentioned maybe before, I'm going to talk a lot about shamanism. And we'll talk a lot more about that in other episodes and even what it is. But it's literally the oldest form of thought on the planet in terms of a system of thought. My sister's husband, who I've apprenticed with for many years, is a shaman. And what he taught me is what you're going to start learning here, literally is what makes the law of attraction work for you or against you. So the law of attraction is basically wherever you have your attention, wherever you have your emotions, that's what you attract. But see, what he taught me that many of you might not know yet is he taught me that every thought that I have has a vibration and it has a frequency. And this is physics. And when I learned that I needed to stop focusing on just thinking about money, and I had to learn about feeling emotionally about money, when I learned that, and I learned, which we're going to dig into a lot here, when I learned that emotions, and I'll cover this again more in depth in just a bit, but when I learned this, I learned that we create money and we attract in our life from our vibration and our frequency, and not so much from what we think. Yet most of you are working from your left brain from what you think. So you think you know the law of attraction, and you've watched The Secret and all, that DVD 12, 13, 14, 15 years ago. So you know all of this. Actually, I'm going to back up. You don't know it, you understand it. So you understand it all, but you're not sure why it's not working. The reason it's not working for you is because you don't know it. And until you know about frequency and vibration, you stay in your old patterns. So, another huge shift for you right now. You ready? Money does not come from hard work. Money comes from the universe. Money comes from physics. Money is physics. Money comes from your thought, and money comes from your vibration. And I'm going to talk, and I'm going to create, subtle distinctions when I say money comes from thought. But actually, your thoughts create your vibration. Money comes from the universe. So write that down if you're not driving. And here, because I'm going to prove this to you in just a minute. And here's where I want you to start working from. Because your entire lifetime, you've been led to believe, and it's not true, that if I work equals money. That is not true. And let me actually back up here for those of you that are extremely analytical. Yes. I mean, you go to a minimum wage job and you work 1 hour and you make, I don't know, what's minimum wage? $7, $8 an hour? Well, you know what? Money does come from that work. But what I want to clarify, and the distinction here, is that extreme abundance does not come from work. And as a matter of fact, you might know people, you look at them and you're like, well, how come they never seem to be working? How come they're not working 60 hours a week, but yet they make all this money? The reason that happens is because they're working from vibration, and they're working from prosperity consciousness. And because of that, they are engaging the law of attraction in the way that it actually attracts money for them instead of repelling money for them. So stick with me. I know I've said a whole lot so far, but stick with me through the entire episode because, like I said, or if I didn't say, I wanted to say, this is not some rah-rah law of attraction episode. I'm going to give you some clear-cut steps at the end of this episode that will shift your dependence from, because your dependence for most of you for money has been on work. And I'm going to shift your dependence from work equaling money to your vibration and your consciousness equaling money. And when you master this and you come to know it, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. Just a couple of minutes ago, I corrected myself and I said, well, a lot of things that I'm going to say or have said here, you already know. And then I corrected myself and I said, it's not that you know it, but it's that you understand it. When most people read personal development, books, or they go to seminars or webinars or listen to speakers, many times people will say, yep, I know that, I know that, I know that. And that's not true. They understand it. Now, what do I mean by that? The difference between knowing and understanding. Everyone listening right now, let's take a broken arm, for example. Everyone understands what a broken arm is. I mean, there's not a single person listening anywhere in the world that doesn't know what a broken arm is, right? So we know. However, personally, I've never had a broken bone in my body. I'm very fortunate. I'm 54 and never even had so much as a stitch in my body. And I've not had a prescription since 1992. And by the way, we're going to talk in a future episode about how to use the mind to heal and how to stay well. Okay, so what I want to share here is that I understand what a broken arm is, no question about it. But I don't know what a broken arm is. Because see, if you've ever had a broken arm or a broken bone, and you've had the pain, you've had that experience, you know what a broken bone is. So understanding it, yes, I understand it well. Knowing it, I do not know what a broken bone is. And the same thing with many of you listening now or listening to content in the past. You understand it, but you don't know it. And until you come to know about vibration and frequency and you master it and you live from that place, there's a very good chance that you are going to struggle for money. Now, I think I've already alluded to this a couple of times, but the classic law of attraction is that if you think about money and you focus on money, then you're going to attract money. I want to share with you right now that is an epic fail place to work from. And I don't even want you to take my word for it, because if you look at your life, I mean, how much have you focused on money and you've done everything they say and you've done the visualization and everything else, and then you get on your you get on the app on your phone, or you get on your computer and you check your bank account, or do you go to your you go to your ATM and you look at your balance and you're like, whoa, I've got no money in the bank, or I don't have enough, or I can't cover my my bills this month. All right. We're going to get really serious here. This is the epic fail point for most people, is that when it comes to money, most people focus on not having it, and they focus on lack. Let me explain what that means. So many people, when they're wanting to use the law of attraction, what they're doing is, you know what? I need money. Rent is coming due, or the car payment, or the student loan, or the Visa bill, or whatever. I need money. Come on, universe. I need money. Send money my way. Send clients my way. Send the money my way. Here's the very subtle but very powerful distinction, is that when you focus on attracting money because you need money, you're focusing on money from lack. Consider that. You're focusing on lack, meaning you're not focusing on creating abundance for the sake of creating abundance. You're focused on bringing money in your life because you don't have any money. Now, when I started this episode, I said that life reflects us. And because life reflects us, what that means is that whatever you put out, like Newton's third law of motion, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, what you put out is what you attract back. Do you see that very, very subtle but very small distinction there? That if you're wanting money out of fear, see, most people, when they're engaging the law of attraction, they're engaging the law of attraction because they need money. And because they need money, they're in fear and desperation. And that's what they're vibrating and that's what they're feeling. And that's because, what you're vibrating and feeling is what you're attracting back. So what you're doing is you're using the law of attraction to actually repel, because at a subtle level, and by the way, the universe does not read English. It reads vibration. It's physics and it's mathematics. And we're going to dig more into this. So stay with me. You'll understand once we're done with this episode. So if you're saying, I need money, okay, I'm going to focus on the law of attraction, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to bring $2,000 into my bank account so that I can pay my rent. The subtle distinction is that you're working from desperation. That's what you're putting out. That's what you get back. That's how you, many times, and I did for my 20s, that's how many of us use the law of attraction to repel money as opposed to attracting money. And to take this a little farther here is that most people don't focus on the law of attraction when they have money. Consider that for a moment. You ever noticed that when you have a lot of money, you don't focus on having a lot of money because you have a lot of money? Most people focus on the law of attraction when they don't have money, which then goes to what I'm telling you, is that they're working from desperation and they're working from fear. And then when they work from desperation and fear and they put out to the universe, I don't have money, the universe says, okay. And of course, the universe doesn't speak English, but metaphorically, the universe says, okay, you don't have money. We're going to make sure that you don't have money. You ever noticed before? You ever notice that people that need the money the most have the least amount of money? Why? Because that is the vibration they put out, and that's the corresponding experience that they have in their life. And it's the same thing. Another example here is when people are well. When people are well, and this probably applies to you, have you ever noticed that when you're actually well, you don't focus on being well? People don't focus on being well until they're sick, and then they focus on not being sick. And the same thing with the law of attraction is people don't focus on abundance when they have it. They only focus when they don't have it. That's the vibration they put out. And I've said this for the third or fourth time now. That's what they put out, and that's exactly what they bring back. So a big takeaway for you right now is that you have to focus on emotional abundance. What most people do is they focus on financial abundance, not recognizing that the financial abundance is driven by the emotional abundance. And I'll explain this in terms of physics and everything else in just a bit. But your first takeaway is this, is that you first have to focus on emotional abundance. And here's a great life lesson and opportunity for you, is that it's hard, and I've been there, so I get it. It's hard for a lot of people to actually focus on emotional abundance, which is an internal thing. It's their internal world, when their external world has no money. So actually what people do is, which we'll get to in a moment also, is they let the external world literally flip their internal world upside down. Now they're emotionally all distraught about money, and guess what? They bring the emotional distress right back to them. So write this down. And obviously you've heard me say before, make sure you're not driving or, doing something that's going to, that needs your attention. But I must first be emotionally abundant if I want to attract financial abundance. I'll say that again. I must first be emotionally abundant if I want to attract financial abundance. All right, I said a little about this earlier, and I said that money does not come from what you think. It does not. Because look at your own life. You think about money. Actually, there's not a day that goes by in your life, for the most part, that you're not thinking about money in some way. Even if you're buying lunch, you're thinking about money. You have no money in the bank, you're thinking about money. You're paying your bills, you're thinking about money. You're paying your tuition, you're thinking about money. Money is a staple that consumes a large part of our consciousness throughout our day. So, as I said, many of you think that money comes from work, which is external, or it comes from what you think, but it does not. So please, a big takeaway is that money comes from emotional abundance, and emotional Abundance is how you feel. So I want to ask you a question right now. How do you feel about money? Not what do you think about money? How do you feel about money? Take a second, check in with that. I want to go a little farther with that. I want you to think about how you treat money emotionally. Let's say, for example, that you have a partner, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a husband, a wife. Or you've had one, just follow along with the metaphor here. But let's say your partner, you say to them, you know what? You're never enough. You don't do enough for me. What have you done for me lately? You're never there when I need you. What kind of relationship would you have if that's the way you treated your partner? Consider that. Well, that's the way that most people emotionally treat money. And when you emotionally treat money that way, that's the vibration that you create. And then what you do is you attract that vibration back to you. All right, now I think you're probably having some ahas and some light bulbs going off, because when I ask you these questions about how you feel about money and how you treat money, and I have been there, so I know that many of you, you do not treat money well, because when it's not there to serve you, you're cursing it. You're never enough, blah, 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 and all the things that you say. All right, I want to shift the way that you even think about yourself as a being. I guarantee you, most of you probably never think about it this way. If I said, what are you? You would say, well, I'm a human being. But let's go even farther. Is that biologically, chemically, and in terms of physics, you are an electromagnetic being. And when it comes to thinking and feeling, thinking is electro and feeling is magnetic. You are a thinking and you are a feeling being. And I think you've already gathered at this point is you don't get what you think about money. You get what you feel about money, because feeling is what activates the vibration and the frequency. So abundance of money comes from feeling vibration. It does not come from doing activity. The doing activity actually, for most people, the doing, and meaning the work, the external work, the doing activity for most people, and I see this all the time, and it falls in that statistic, that 78% statistic of people that are just working paycheck to paycheck. When you actually depend upon your money from work and you go do things for the money, that keeps people in sustenance. It keeps people in just enough. And have you ever noticed that when you work from just enough, that's all that you ever have in your bank account is just enough. And you have just enough this month and just enough next month and so, every month, but you're not working from abundance. You're working from sustenance and you're working from just enough. So I've said it many times, and I'm going to keep saying it, is that money does not come from work. And let's look at your own life. So how many times, how many months, how many years have you worked your fingers to the bone? Maybe you're an entrepreneur. I don't know. Maybe you're in sales, or, we all air quote go to work for the most part. But how many times have you worked yourself in the bone 40, 50, 60, 70-hour weeks? I mean, people do that. Some people work 2 and 3 jobs. But you know what? You're still struggling. You don't have the money to show for it. So, as I said, money doesn't come from the work. I want to give you a great example here. I was talking to my tech guy recently, and a really decent guy, and candidly, I treat him very well financially. He's an amazing guy, and he's in Europe, and he was telling me about a project that he did a couple of weeks ago. He built a website for someone. He did a really good job, and the guy's extremely good at what he does. And I said, how many hours did you put into that website? And he kind of went, like that. He's like, geez. He goes, we put about 100 hours into developing that website. And I said, what did you get paid for that website? And he said, $2,500. Basically, he worked 100 hours for $2,500. And I was getting him to see what I'm getting you to see here is that he could have actually charged probably 4 times the amount of money that he did for that website, but he didn't feel right about charging the money. And I'm telling you, this guy's good at what he does. I mean, he's phenomenal. at design and development. He could have charged 4 times as much, and he didn't because he didn't feel comfortable charging $10,000 for the site. Therefore, he worked for 100 hours for $2,500, worked till, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and he could have made 4 times as much had he actually had the consciousness and the confidence to charge that money. Okay, so I want to go somewhere else now, and I want to start showing you what I'm talking about here. I want you to start seeing. Is I said many times is that money comes from vibration and it comes from the universe. So let me tell you what I mean by that. Have you ever had a time in your life where somebody just fell into your lap? Money fell into your lap, a client. Somebody calls you and says, you know what? Hey, I want to hire you. I talked to Bob Smith or, Jane Doe, and they said you're amazing. And if you're good enough for them, you're good enough for me. I want to hire you. And you could be a real estate agent. I've seen this happen before. I'm looking to buy a home in Arizona, and I just called one of my former clients and said, hey, do you know somebody in Arizona? And I showed up. This agent did not work for me. I fell into their lap. And not only that, a good friend of mine, who I'll mention in a minute, is also looking for a home in the same area. So this real estate agent picked up two. We're not potential buyers. We're buyers of nice homes without doing any work. Metaphorically, in air quote, we fell into her lap. So let me ask you, has money just shown up in your life and you didn't work for it? You didn't prospect for it? Do not overthink this, because some people will say, well, I built everything, blah, 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 blah. I did all this, I did all that. And then money showed up somewhere later because what I did later, worked now. No, that's not what I mean. Plain and simple, has money ever fallen into your lap without you working for it? Even if somebody's gifted you money, that fell into your lap. So money doesn't come from work. And I used to believe that it did, as I've said, and it's very clear at this point. Where I work from is that money comes from the universe, and the universe reflects my consciousness, which is vibration and frequency. Let me give you another example here. There is a really good friend of mine. Some of you may know who he is. Actually, he had me on his podcast about, a year and a half ago. A guy named James Wedmore. And his podcast is Mind Your Business Podcast. If you're in any kind of business, small business, you're an entrepreneur, I urge you to listen to his podcast, Mind Your Business Podcast. I was coaching James. James hired me as his coach about a year ago, and I was coaching him. And let me back up here. On Tuesday of this particular week, I went to the bank and I took out $10,000 because I wanted to help someone. And I wanted to gift someone $10,000 because, again, I wanted to help them. This was on Tuesday. On Thursday, James and I were talking, and he said, hey, what's your PayPal email address? And I told him what it was. I didn't really question why. I didn't know. Well, I took out $10,000 out of my bank account on Tuesday. On Thursday, I get a notification. James Wedmore sent me $10,000 for some additional coaching that I wasn't going to charge him for. Mind you, for the original coaching, I charged him for that. I did some ancillary coaching, and I did not charge him for it, and he paid me $10,000 for that ancillary coaching. So what I want you to notice here is that I took money out of the bank, I put it out in the universe, and I know that I attract money, and the money came right back to me. So a question that I want to ask you right now is, have you had money show up in your life unexpected? You didn't work for it, you didn't ask for it, and boom, it shows up. And I know that everyone listening, you've had that happen, and what that proves is that money does not come from work, it comes from the universe. And speaking of your own life, I want you to look at your own life right now. Do you work really hard? Do you put in the hours? And then the question that I have for you is, are you rich? Does money pile up in your bank account? Does money flow easily into your life? If it doesn't, it's because your consciousness is not where it needs to be to easily attract money into your life. Also, I think that you can see now is that most people work backwards. They work, and this whole podcast is Transform Your Life from the Inside Out, is most people work backwards in their life. They work from bringing money in based upon their behavior out in the external world instead of recognizing that money is going to come not from your thought, but from your consciousness. So we've been conditioned. I know that I was, and I know that most of you listening, you've been conditioned to work for your money. And this has been passed down through generations, because when I look at, and I hear all the time, from he's not on the planet anymore, but my grandfather, my mother's father. I used to always hear stories about, well, I lived through the Great Depression, and the Great Depression, this happened and that happened, and we had soup lines, and we had this, and we had that, and you couldn't find work, and all these kinds of things. Well, what I also want to point out is I watched my grandfather live his entire life as a farmer, and he struggled financially his entire life. He passed that to my mother, who thought, she was doing me a favor by passing that to me. So many of us have been conditioned to believe that we have to work for money, and I want you to get right now that is not true. All right. What I want to do now is I want to go into a little ancient wisdom, and I want to go into some science. And the first question that I have for you is this, is what is your emotional state regarding money, wealth, and abundance? And I want you to really, really take a look at that. Another question, have you ever even thought about that? Have you ever sat down and say, well, what is my emotional state? How do I feel about money? And I'm going to just make this really easy for you. Look at your past year, and then I want you to look at your bank account. And I guarantee you pretty much how you have felt about money in the past year has determined what is in your bank account right now. Why? Because what I just said is most people work from the outside in. Let me give you another example here of the outside in, is that many times people will look at their bank account and there's not a lot of money in it. There's not enough money in it. And then what they do is they feel bad about that. And then they worry about that and they get stressed about that. And then again, notice what I said, everything is vibration and frequency. So if you get worried and you get stressed about not having money in the bank, what do you attract right back to you? And what you're letting happen is you're letting your external environment affect and control your internal environment. And that's actually what creates for you. Speaking of the external and the internal, I want to share a personal story with you here. My brother-in-law, the shaman, this was probably back in 2003 or 4. He grew up in Mexico, and he and my sister, they went to Mexico. They came back. I picked him up at the airport, and he got in the back seat of my car. Now, he's from Mexico, but obviously, well, not obviously, but he is a U.S. citizen and lives here in the States. He works as a healer. And he got in the back seat, and he said, which the word cuñado is Spanish for brother-in-law. And he said, Cuñado, how are you? And I said, I'm great today. And this is what he said to me. And you can also apply this to money. He said, yep. He goes, you know what? When everything in your world is working exactly like you want it to work, you're happy. And when things don't work according to your expectations, you're pissed off, you're angry, you're this, you're that, you're in a foul mood, whatever it might be. And he said, you have to learn to work from the inside out and not the outside in. You have to learn to control your emotions because your emotions are what create for you. And what I'm sharing with you right now, I don't know, what is this, 15 years later or whatever, this is where I started learning this. And this is when I recognized that, yeah, whatever I have in my external world is because I'm already creating it in my internal world. And the money is the same thing for you. I was just talking about emotional states in that moment, but the money is the same for you. As I just said about the external experience, which is something we can see with the 5 senses or experience. Many people look at their bank account, which is external. They don't like what they see, and that completely affects their frequency and their vibration, and then they pull no money back to them. So, how about you? You ever logged on? I'm sure you can relate. You ever logged on to your bank account and you're actually even afraid to open it? You're afraid to put your ATM card in the slot because you're afraid to see what your balance is. And then you see your balance and you get mad because somebody didn't pay you, or you didn't get your money, or your paycheck bounced, or somebody's late in paying you, or they didn't pay you in what they promised you. And then you're sad about it and you get fearful about it and then you worry about it. All right, let me put this in very simple terms. Now you're having feelings about all of this, and you are spewing that out into the universe, and the universe, which is where we started this episode, the universe just returns it right back to you. I do say earlier or at some time in this episode, please share this episode with people that you know, because I guarantee you, if you're not, I guarantee you that you know someone in your life that is struggling with money because they're using the law of attraction to work against them instead of for them. One of my clients, he's also a very, very former client, coaching client, and also a very good friend and somebody that I've mentored for years. He's very, very wealthy this day and age. He's probably 35, 36 years old. I don't know his exact age, even though we've been friends for a lot of years. I think he's 35. But yet his parents are still struggling with money and they are in their 70s. They have no money. As a matter of fact, he is their retirement. So I'm telling you, no matter where you are right now, I know that there are people in your life that can benefit and can learn from this episode. And this episode is going to be huge for a lot of you. But this is what I want to share with you from my own experience. Sometimes, many times, I don't know, because we're all different, it's hard to make that leap. I had two clients, one-to-one coaching clients a while back. And one client, this is the guy that actually made $700,000 a year. He said to me, he said, Jim, he said, you have money, so you don't have to worry about money. And what I shared with him is that he has it all backwards. Is the reason I have money is because I don't worry about money. When you worry about money, that is an emotion, that's an electromagnetic vibration, and you repel money. And then another real estate agent who makes over $1 million a year said to me one time, he said, Jim, how do you make the leap from not living from the external to the internal? Well, stay with me because I'm going to tell you how I made the leap in just a few minutes. All right, very quickly here is I want to look at science as well. And I did say that we are bio-electromagnetic beings. You are electrons, neutrons, and protons. Plain and simple, you're a ball of energy and you're physics. But most people never look at it that way. So I did say, you've heard me say multiple times now, and I'm being repetitive because repetition is the mother of all learning, is that thought. Let me go here first. We all have brainwaves. I was going to say when you have brainwaves. Well, when you don't, you're dead. You're not in the body anymore. But we all have brainwaves. And brainwaves, there's a machine called an EEG, which is an electroencephalogram. It can actually measure our brainwave activity. That's energy. When people have a heart attack and they're unconscious, why do you think they defibrillate them? I mean, why? Why would you shock somebody? Why? Because we're all energy. So what I want you to understand, and I know that you do, let me go a little further here. Let me actually correct myself. What I want you to come to know, not understand, but know, and I know you've heard it. What I want you to come to know is that everything is energy. Just let that settle for a moment. Everything is energy. Your heartbeat is energy. Brainwaves, energy. Even holding physical money in your hand is electrons, neutrons, and protons. It's atoms. Everything is physics. All right, so let's go even deeper here. So thoughts come from your mind, and then your thoughts affect your emotions. And then what happens is your emotions create vibration, which is movement. This is physics. Then what happens is vibration creates frequency, and frequency is the rate at which vibration occurs. So frequency, either when it comes to money, attracts or repels. So let's say, for example, you have positive emotions, you have gratitude about money. Well, then that's what you vibrate, and then that's, that causes a frequency, and that's what attracts money to you. Yet when you have negative emotions, you have negative thoughts, which create negative emotions, then that creates a vibration for you, which in turn creates a frequency, which repels money. My brother-in-law told me many, many years ago, he said, if you want to attract more money, and he told me this directly, then change your frequency. Not going to go into it right now because I know this is becoming a little bit longer episode than many, but you may want to get, and I mentioned it before, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it here at the podcast, but I mention a lot, is the book called The Kybalion, Kybalion. The Kybalion is the 7 cosmic laws. The transcripts are ancient, even though it was published, I guess, 120 years ago or so, but the transcripts are believed to be ancient teachings. All right, so do you get at this point that you are an electromagnetic being of consciousness? You get that? The rest of this is going to be very easy for you. You do not get it? Well, then I don't know what to tell you because you're going to continue to repeat your old patterns. So we live in a universe of consciousness. And there's been a whole lot of, a whole lot of research behind this, but we're going to keep this really simple. Is that we live in a universe of consciousness, and whatever you vibrate is what you put out in the universe, and it's what you bring back, which I'd mentioned earlier, like Newton's third law of motion. Even in the Bible, and I'm not endorsing the Bible, I'm just using this as an example. I don't know the exact verse in terms of numbering, but it's Galatians. As you sow, so shall you reap. So have you ever thought about, like I asked you earlier, what you actually sow when it comes to your feelings about money? Because what you sow is what you reap right back. I also want to mention, I'm not going to go into it for time. You can look it up on your own. Go to YouTube and actually Google double slit, SLIT experiment, double slit experiment. This is not pseudoscience. This is real science. What they discovered in this experiment, let me just put it in layman's terms. What they discovered in this experiment is that the outcome of the experiment was actually affected by the expectations of the observers of the experiment. Basically, what they were saying, or what they discovered, is that what the observers expected to happen affected the outcome. What the conclusion was is that the physical universe, the physical world around us, bends to our consciousness and our vibration and our frequency. So go look it up on your own. And there's one video that's really good. I think it's called Dr. Quantum, and it's actually the easiest one to watch. It's about 5 minutes long, and it's a cartoon, and I think it's called, again, Dr. Quantum. Watch that, but the last 15 or 20 seconds is where the meat is, because what he said is the observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing. Basically, what that means is that by observing the experiment, they collapsed the outcome of the experiment into their expectations. All right, okay. So let's move on here, and I might have a physicist listening, or, I don't know. But what I do know is stay out of your crap. Stay out of the overanalysis. And you know what? Science, no science, I don't care. I'm just trying to validate this for those of you that need the scientific aspect of it. And then many times people will say things, well, so-and-so is pseudoscience. Well, we live in a planet of baby science. I mean, we are not a very old species. So let's just keep it at ancient wisdom. And in just a moment, I'm going to give you the steps, the exact steps to use to practice so you can master, so you can use the law of attraction to manifest for you as opposed to repelling for you. All right, you ready? 3 things. There are 3 steps that you need to master to use the law of attraction to actually bring money to you as opposed to it repelling money for you like it did in the past. And I'm going to break these 3 things down for you. These 3 things are this. Number 1 is you must learn to manage your emotions, which affect your frequency. Number 2 is a question I have for you is, what is your prosperity consciousness? How do you feel about being rich? Because see, you can manage your emotions, and you can have great emotions and feel good about not having money. And when you feel good about not having money, then your prosperity consciousness about money is low, and you do not attract money. What value do you place on money? Do you overvalue? Do you undervalue? I used to say things like, you know what? I don't care about the money. I just love what I do. Well, what I was telling the universe is that I don't value money. And if I don't value money, then I don't feel money, and I don't feel the value, and I don't attract it. I had a friend one time, and he said, this is exactly what he said. He said, you know what? I'm okay being broke as long as I have a project to work on. Well, how does he feel about that? What is the vibration? What is he putting out? And he was always broke. Those are the first 2. Number 3 is this. Separate your money from your work. All right, let's break these down even farther. Number 1, manage your emotions, which we've talked about this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Do you worry about money? Are you fearful about money? Are you sad about money? However you feel is the emotion, and as you know, that creates the vibration and the frequency. The most powerful place for you to attract money is to have peace of mind around money, to have gratitude about money. Because see, look at it this way. What is your feelings How do you feel when you have peace of mind? I mean, we're in la la land, right? I mean, everything is like hunky-dory great and we feel fine about things. And when I say hunky-dory great, I had a thought there that I know I've got a following that's starting in Japan. So I'm a small town Texas farm boy, so to speak. And it's, I mean, it's just where I grew up. So I use a lot of colloquialisms, Texas colloquialisms. Anyway, this is really important. How do you feel when you have peace of mind? And where we want to get to is that we always maintain a well-being and a peace of mind no matter what's going on in our external world, because they are not dependent upon each other, though they affect each other. And this goes back to the lesson that I was telling you earlier. When my brother-in-law got in the car, I was letting my external world drive me. And when things weren't going right in my external world, then my internal world was in chaos. And then I would perpetuate the chaos by putting out that frequency and vibration and bringing it right back to me. All right. Second, so let me just back up here again before I go into the second one. This is a doozy. This is the big one. How do you feel about money? Worry repels. Peace of mind opens up the way to bring money. Step number 2. What is your consciousness? Do you feel rich? So a lot of you listening right now will say, well, you know what? I don't have the physical money, therefore I don't feel rich. I feel poor. And because I feel poor, I feel bad and sad and afraid. So let me show you, and you hear this all the time. All the speakers are always blabbering about, you got to have gratitude. And when you ask people, and I ask people, are you grateful? Everyone always says yes. I mean, who's going to say, you know what? No, I am ungrateful for everything. So everyone, and it's a stock answer. It's kind of like when you go in the store and they say, can I help you? And you say, nope, I'm just looking. It's just habit. It's just rote habit. So when I ask people if they're gratitude, if they have gratitude, everyone always says yes, but they're actually going through the left brain analytical steps and are not really experiencing gratitude. So how do you experience gratitude? Because most people misunderstand gratitude. So here's where I want to take you. I want you to think about all the things in life that support you. Even if you've got an old beat up car, which I had many years ago, and I used to curse that car, my old truck, blah, 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 I hate this whole thing and stuff like that. But what I want you to notice is even though that truck got me from point A to point B, I was ungrateful, and that truck supported me. It got me to work. It literally supported me. So I want you to think about all the things that support you. And I'm going to make this really simple and very powerful for you in a moment. Think about all the things that support you. Now, be grateful for that, even if it's not what you want in the moment. So my old truck many years ago was an old junker, an old clunker, rusted out and beat up. And I didn't have gratitude for it supporting me so that I could go to work to make money to live paycheck to paycheck many years ago. But I'm going to make this really powerful for you right now. And I'm going to show you how to change your frequency. And I was taught this by my brother-in-law. One of the number one things that supports your life, because without it you would be dead in a couple of days, is water. When you go to the kitchen or you get bottled water or whatever you do, before you down that water, what is your gratitude for that water? Consider that for a moment. That water literally keeps you alive. So you want to learn how to change your frequency and you want to learn how to change your vibration? Let's start there. So a challenge that I'm going to give you, and I'm going to be transparent with you. When I was taught this, I had to take sticky notes and put them actually on the shower faucet, on my bathroom sink, on the toilet handle, and on the kitchen sink, on the water purifier. Why? Because I'd forget. So now what I do first thing in the morning is when I fill up my container full of water, because I drink a lot of water in the morning and throughout the day, when I fill up my container, what I do is I hold the water and I bless the water and I have gratitude for the water. Why? Because that water supports me. And when you start learning to work from that place, now you don't have to be grateful for every sip. It's not like take a sip, thank you, water, take a sip, thank you, water. It's not like that. But fill up your container and have gratitude. Now you're starting to work from a place of gratitude for things that support you. And what you want to do is you want to habituate this because there are many things in your life that support you that you have no gratitude for. So this is the easiest way to change your prosperity consciousness is gratitude. And you might have heard that before, but you were actually just, you didn't know it, you understood it. So to know this, start thanking water for nourishing you, for cleansing your body, and for serving you. All right, we have a few more here, then we're going to wrap up. I know we've gone for a while in this episode. This was a game changer when I was taught this by my brother-in-law. And it's separating your money into boxes. And actually, when I was going to tell you the 3 things earlier, I might have left some of you guys hanging, and I apologize for that if I did. But number 3 is separating your money into boxes. And I was sitting down with my brother-in-law. It was New Year's Eve 3 years ago when he taught me this, and it was a massive game changer. So what you may want to do if you're not driving is I want you to draw 2 boxes on a piece of paper, same side, just 2 boxes next to each other, and they're maybe 5-inch by 5-inch boxes. And in the left-hand box, what I want you to do is I want you to write the word money, and I want you to write the word work. And in the right-hand box, it's empty right now. And as you're looking at that, you've got a box there, and everybody puts their money and their work in the same box. That's why people say they go to work to earn a living. Why? Because everyone has their money and work in the same box. When I say everyone, I shouldn't use a universal qualifier because there'll be one person listening out of all the thousands listening say, well, I don't do that. But anyway, 99.9% of you do. All right. Now what I want you to do, and if you're just imagining along, I want you to scratch out the word work in that box. I want you to scratch it out. So all that you have is the word money in that one box. And in the other box, I want you to put the word work. Now, obviously, you've got money in one box, work in another box. You see, here's the mistake that everyone makes. They put their money in their work box, and then their money and their work, the work affects their consciousness. If work goes up, they're happy. Work goes down, they're sad. And then what happens is they create a vibration with that, and they create a frequency, and the money follows the work. When you separate your money and you put it in one box and you put your work in another box and you keep your vibration high, you keep peace of mind high, you keep your gratitude high, and you work from that place and you have prosperity consciousness, knowing that money serves you, and the more money you make, the more people you can help. Because I'm going to share this with you. Many people get very pious and very arrogant, thinking that money is evil or I shouldn't have it or whatever, when for the most part, you can't help anyone if you're broke. Right now, I would not be reaching you if I didn't have a team. And if I was broke, I couldn't afford a team. So the more money I make, the better team that I can hire, which I've got, let me back that up. I have an amazing team. The more team that I can hire, the more team that I can hire, the more that I can expand, the more that I can expand, the more people that I can help. So what I want you to do going forward is no longer connect your money to your work. Because money, as you well know, at this point does not come from work. It comes from your consciousness. So you put your money in one box and you put your work in the other, and you keep your consciousness high, you will find your work money starting to expand and starting to grow. Okay. Woo! Long episode. What are your takeaways? What are your transformational takeaways in this episode? Here they are. Money is internal, it's not external. Money does not come from work, it comes from emotional abundance and emotional vibration. Something I want you to get, which I already know that you get by this point, is that your money will not change on the outside until you transform on the inside. A couple of questions, or a question that I want you to ask here is, what is your vibration about the value and degree of prosperity consciousness? Meaning, how much value do you put on being prosperous? If you put no value on that, even though you might have the highest vibration with gratitude, if you have no value of prosperity consciousness, meaning I attract money, I use money, it's a tool. If you don't have that, then guess what? You're missing part of the equation. So you must value money, but yet for the right reasons. I do not value money so that it can buy me things. I value money as a tool so that I can serve more people. Okay, so your transformational takeaway is this, is you will not be rich until you feel rich. And you know that I'm a little repetitive. You will not be rich until you feel rich. Okay, that wraps up this episode on the law of attraction. And are you using it to repel money, or are you using it to attract money? And stay tuned and keep listening, because what we're going to do next week is we are going to, big news, we're going to 2 episodes per week. I'm going to be releasing an episode on Monday, and that episode is going to be Q&A, because I have got a stockpile of you sending in your questions. So on Monday, it's going to be a Q&A, and actually I'm going to answer all the questions you guys have been sending in. And then on Wednesday, it's going to be the release of the normal weekly podcast like this. All right, so I'm kind of testing out what you guys want. But where we're going to go in the next Wednesday episode is it's going to be a performance episode. And the episode's going to be something that I hear from a lot of you guys. I hear it all the time. Is I never have enough time, is what many of you say. And the reason that you do not have enough time is because you're managing your life by time and not by commitment. And until you start managing your time by commitment, you will never have enough time, which is what we're going to dig into and dive deep in the very next episode. So thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for helping me reach more people and transform the world by sharing this with other people. I'm glad you're here, and I'll catch you on the other episodes. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. You know, if you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.